Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the stories we have lined up for you tonight. President Trump says it will be hard to make a deal with Canada after Mark Carney announced Ottawa intends to recognize a Palestinian state. The tariff deal deadline is Friday. Meantime, Canadian aid is being airdropped into Gaza, and photos are being posted of pallets with Canadian flags. And a researcher from Lethbridge Polytechnic and his team awarded for their work in AI.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks so much for joining us. U.S. President Donald Trump dampened expectations of a trade deal with Canada, materializing at the last minute as his Friday tariff deadline looms. But he did give a 90-day deadline delay to Mexico. In a post on social media earlier on Thursday morning, the president said it will be very hard to make a deal with Canada after Prime Minister Mark Carney announced Wednesday Ottawa intends to recognize a Palestinian state. Trump previously sent a letter to Carney threatening to impose 35% tariffs if Canada does not make a trade deal by Friday. The White House has said those duties would not apply to goods compliant with the Canada-U.S.-Mexico Agreement on Trade, better known as CUSMA. As we reported Wednesday, Prime Minister Mark Carney says Canada intends to recognize Palestine as a state in September if the Palestinian Authority agrees to undertake elections next year. He says it's important to work toward a two-state solution, saying this has been undermined by the Hamas attack on Israel in 2023, as well as Israeli policies in Gaza and the West Bank. Here's his announcement.
This intention is predicated on the Palestinian Authority's commitment to much-needed reforms, including commitments by the Palestinian Authority's President Abbas to fundamentally reform its governance, to hold general elections in 2026 in which Hamas can play no part, and to demilitarize the Palestinian state. Prospects for a two-state solution have been steadily and gravely eroded, including by the pervasive threat of Hamas terrorism to Israel and its people, culminating in the heinous attack of October 7, 2023, and the terrorist organization Hamas's long-standing violent rejection of Israel's right to exist and its rejection of a two-state solution. The deepening suffering of civilians leaves no room for delay in coordinated international action to support peace, security, and the dignity of human life. Preserving a two-state solution means standing with all people who choose peace over violence or terrorism. And it means honoring their innate desire for peaceful coexistence.
Meantime, Canadian aid is being airdropped into Gaza a day after Ottawa announced its intention to recognize Palestinian statehood. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand says Jordan is helping to airdrop Canadian aid and has posted a photo of pallets with Canadian flags taped to them. A Canadian teenager is doing his part to help support a child recovery program in Ukraine. 16-year-old Jaden Braves volunteered to help an organization called Save Ukraine, which organizes rescue missions to return children who have been abducted from Russia. In the capital of Kyiv, Braves has met with several officials, including Canadian and Austrian ambassadors, to see how countries like Canada and those in the EU can increase support for Ukraine.
Followed the war and the Russian invasion in 2020, we had 30,000 kids kidnapped by the Russians, taken into occupied territories, taken to military camps, women, girls put in orphanages. And so I started to work with an organization called Save Ukraine, which is the organization responsible for 70% of the rescuings of these children, where we've seen actual operations take place to get these kids back. And the number one way that I can help as a young person and as a person that understands, oh my gosh, people are being kidnapped, is to try to get them back. And so I was compelled enough to start work with this organization and supporting their efforts. And I've been here for a few weeks working on strategies and supporting. It's just about slowly figuring that out. How can we be successful in ensuring Ukraine wins and ensuring that 30,000 kids that have been wrongfully kidnapped and are experiencing sexual abuse and are experiencing militarization and brainwashing can be, brought home. I've been discussing on the ground here how Ukraine can collaborate more with Canada, and I look forward to coming back to Canada and continuing to ensure Canada can collaborate further with Ukraine. And strengthening, being able to tell that story, being able to go speak in Canada on a platform I typically would be, and say as a young person that we as young people need to go support other young people that are in very dire situations.
Brave says he was inspired to get involved after participating in the NATO summit in Washington in 2024 as a representative of NATO Canada. Natural Resources Canada seismologist John Cassidy says the massive Russian quake that sent tsunami waves towards British Columbia on Tuesday was the same type of tremor experienced off Canada's west coast. He says data from the quake will help inform the science of tsunami generation and future emergency responses in BC.
We have the same type of earthquakes off the coast of Vancouver Island, Washington, Oregon, and off of Haida Gwaii as well. So we'll be looking at data from this earthquake that will tell us something about how the seafloor moved and how that related to tsunami generation. It's also an important reminder for all of us living along the West Coast, especially, that this is an active earthquake zone. It's an active tsunami zone.
To be blunt, when I heard about it, it's so far away. It's in Russia. It's halfway around the world from where we are. What are we really going to see in British Columbia? Had to overcome that feeling that maybe people were overreacting a little bit, and the other piece of it is, and what was underlined for me in the briefings that I received, is just how unpredictable these can be. That the seismologists and the people who are expert in this area try their best to predict what the impacts will be, but we could actually see a significant impact here in British Columbia, and people need to be prepared. That's why I rely heavily on people who are expert in this area, and was very glad for their advice on it. It was a trial run. Fortunately, we didn't see a huge impact here in BC.
Ontario has officially cancelled its $100 million contract with Starlink, but the province refuses to say how much it costs the taxpayers to rip up the deal. Here's Jason White of the Canadian Press.
Ontario's Energy and Mines Minister Stephen Lecce did not answer numerous questions Wednesday about the kill fee the province will now have to pay SpaceX. The deal was set to go live in June, and it would have covered the costs for hardware and installation, but not the monthly fees for about 15,000 residents of rural and Northern Ontario. Premier Doug Ford killed the deal with Elon Musk's SpaceX back in March after the U.S. imposed tariffs on Canadian goods. Musk supported Donald Trump's bid to become U.S. president and was brought into Trump's inner circle after his inauguration in January. It wasn't long after that Musk glommed onto Trump's threats to annex Canada. In February, a petition signed by several 100,000 Canadians demanded the federal government remove Musk's Canadian citizenship. Musk responded on X, quote, "Canada is not a real country."
Today in New York City, police officers lined up 4 rows deep to pay respects to a fellow officer who was among the 4 victims killed in a gunman's rampage at a Manhattan office tower on Tuesday. 36-year-old Didarul Islam leaves behind a pregnant wife and 2 children.
Everything for him was about building something for his family, for his mosque, for his adopted city, and for his relatives back in Bangladesh. They were all in his care, and he found peace in watching them grow. So today, it is my honor and my great privilege to promote police officer Didarul Islam to detective first grade.
The gunman who eventually killed himself was trying to target the headquarters of the National Football League, but apparently took the wrong elevator. Lethbridge police have taken a suspect into custody following a high-risk incident earlier this afternoon. Police responded to a call of a male armed with a weapon inside a building that is under construction in the 900 block of 1st Avenue South. Police were asking members of the public to avoid the area. Few details have emerged. However, police say they were able to take one man into custody. They say the investigation is ongoing, and so far, no charges have been laid. Starting next year, frontline officers with the Lethbridge Police Service will begin wearing body-worn cameras, a move driven by a provincial mandate aimed at increasing transparency and public trust in law enforcement. LPS Chief Shaheen Medizadeh explains what this represents for the city and what benefits it will bring.
Really increases the level of transparency for the police. These devices can provide us with much better evidence collection and cases to the courts. In addition, it's going to also address some of the complaints against the service where we have actually video, audio footage of some of the complaints at times that public comes to us, and which we can really expedite those investigations to move forward. There has to be training, yes, because just putting a piece of equipment doesn't work if they are not fully trained. We'll be looking at 160 cameras, in fact. The number is closer to 160. We are not purchasing the cameras, we are leasing them, because the leasing is the best way to have this. That way, there's services provided by the vendor to actually, for if the cameras break down or the new model comes up, we don't have to constantly adding cost and purchasing new stuff.
The funding for this comes from the city's Municipal Revenue Stabilization Reserve. Barring any grants that might be received, the program will get one-time allocations of up to $555,000 in 2025 and up to $914,000 in 2026. A 49-year-old Edmonton man is facing charges after border agents discovered cocaine at the Coutts border crossing in southern Alberta on Monday. According to authorities, a search of a commercial truck coming into Canada from the States turned up a duffel bag containing 67 kilograms of cocaine. Police say Trey Tran Knockley of Edmonton is charged with possession of a controlled substance, possession for the purpose of trafficking, and smuggling into Canada. He was scheduled to appear in court in Lethbridge today. A researcher at Lethbridge Polytechnic was awarded a prestigious award, Research Innovation Award, that is, for using AI in developing a low-cost, less wasteful method of crop testing. Dr. Chandra Singh is the director of the Advanced Post-Harvest Technology Center, which specializes in management and eventual distribution of harvested crops, including grains, pulses, oilseeds, potatoes, and sugar beets. Dr. Singh, alongside colleagues from the University of Guelph and the University of Prince Edward Island, were able to utilize artificial intelligence to more accurately assess pulse crop quality without damaging them. Dr. Singh says this imaging technology can be integrated throughout the pulse supply chain in Canada and abroad quickly.
NIR imaging or the imaging spectroscopic technique, they are non-destructive and they are rapid, and you can just scan the sample. You don't have to destroy or waste it or use the chemical to do the testing. So that way it's economical and environmentally sustainable. Down the line, they should be able to use it at their own farm to do it. But I think the primary focus will be to the grain elevators, because that's where they bring their crop, and then if they can get evaluated quickly and almost no time, and they know what the quality they are producing, what they are delivering, and then if they get a premium that my crop is better than anybody else, they should be awarded. So I think it's definitely win-win for the farmer, win-win for the grain industry. I feel very honored to get the recognition that work we do as a academic person. That's one thing that you always want to do. So I'm very happy for my team and my collaborators that we got this nationally recognized award based on the project that we put forward and the results. So I feel very happy.
Dr. Singh theorizes this technology can be integrated within the grain industry within 3 to 5 years. Pretty cool. So does AI scare you or excite you? Some new research shows how people are using artificial intelligence in their daily lives. The poll from AP NORC finds that most adults in the United States say they've used AI to search for information, but it's the younger adults who appear to be the generation leaning the most into AI, with many using it for brainstorming and even work tasks.
The big one is search. Most U.S. adults, about 60%, say they've used AI to search for information. About 4 in 10 are using it for tasks like work and drafting emails. One of the big takeaways from the poll, though, is that young people are the ones who are leaning into AI. Most U.S. adults under 30 say they've used AI for brainstorming and coming up with ideas, something that's much less common among older adults. We talked to Courtney, a 34-year-old woman in Des Moines, Iowa, who uses ChatGPT to help her meal plan. Courtney is using it to calculate the nutritional value of food and reduce food waste in her life. Others are more skeptical, so while there are plenty of people who don't seem to be using AI beyond their search engines, it's clearly appealing to the youngest, most tech-savvy people. And as AI becomes more of a fixture in their lives, we could see even wider adoption of this technology.
Folks in the southeastern Alberta community of Bow Island will have to do a little hunting for emergency medical care this weekend. Bow Island is about 100 kilometers northeast of Lethbridge. Alberta Health Services says the emergency department at the Bow Island Health Centre will be closed this weekend due to lack of clinical coverage. It says an ongoing personnel shortage makes it unable to secure regular and consistent coverage during the remainder of the week. AHS says weekend coverage from 7 a.m. Fridays to 7 a.m. Mondays will resume on August 8th. During the temporary closure, nursing staff will remain on site to provide care for long-term care residents. If you have an emergency, you're asked to call 911. EMS services are prepared to respond to emergency events and support inter-facility transfers to neighboring sites. Patients seeking care can access emergency services at the Tabor Health Centre or the Medicine Hat Regional Hospital. Some revelations have surfaced about U.S. President Donald Trump and his relationship with known sexual pedophile and financier Jeffrey Epstein. Speaking with reporters on Air Force One, Trump admitted that Epstein stole young female employees who worked at the spa at his Mar-a-Lago estate.
People were taken out of the spa, hired by him. In other words, gone. And other people would come and complain, this guy is taking people from the spa. I didn't know that. And then when I heard about it, I told him, I said, listen, we don't want you taking our people, whether it was spa or not spa. I don't want him taking people. And he was fine. And then not too long after that, he did it again. And I said, out of here.
Mr. President, did one of those stolen, persons, that include Virginia Jeffrey?
I don't know. I think she worked at the spa. I think so. I think that was one of the people, yeah. He stole her. And by the way, she had no complaints about us, as you know. None whatsoever.
Giuffre was recruited and groomed by Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell back in 2000 and was hired as a masseuse. She was one of Epstein's numerous rape victims. She committed suicide earlier this year at the age of 41. So sad. Some news in the entertainment world. The rumor mill continues to churn for Justin Trudeau and Katy Perry. The former prime minister was spotted at the U.S. pop star's Montreal concert on July 30th. One video posted on X shows Trudeau clapping and nodding his head as the fireworks singer commands the stage. This was days after they dined together at a plateau eatery called La Violon. On July 28th, that's when that happened. Perry recently split from longtime partner and actor Orlando Bloom and is currently on tour. Her tour stops in Quebec City on August 1st and Toronto August 5th and 6th. Trudeau and his ex-wife Sophie Gregory split up in 2023. About 40 firefighters from Quebec are set to fly to Alberta this weekend to help put out some wildfires. There are currently 54 fires burning in Alberta, and the province says 13 are out of control. Quebec's firefighting agency says recent rain and high humidity levels have helped dampen flames there, allowing it to send help to Alberta without compromising its own wildfire response. Meantime, wildfire smoke has triggered air quality advisories in parts of the country. Here's a look at the federal government's map of wildfire smoke. This map shows fine particulate matter and also shows the movement of the smoke between July 30th and August the 2nd. Environment Canada says smoke from forest fires can cause reduced air quality and visibility that can fluctuate throughout the day. The smoke is so bad in Manitoba, an outdoor summer event for hundreds of children in Winnipeg had to be canceled because of health concerns due to poor air quality. The weather agency advises people to limit their time outdoors, noting Toronto's air quality index was a high risk this morning, and people should consider postponing sports or other outdoor activities. And although there are some wildfires burning in Alberta, not a lot of smoke in southern Alberta. Instead, mostly hot, sunny days until a rainy, long weekend, that is. I'll be right back with your full weather forecast. A hot Friday is ahead of us, but unfortunately not the warmest of long weekends. Yeah, not the greatest. Beginning Friday, we are seeing a high of 29 degrees, mainly cloudy skies, a little bit of partly cloudy skies, I should say, but we could see a 30% chance of showers, risk of thunderstorm later on in the evening. And then from Friday evening straight through to Sunday, we're seeing periods of rain, and then a high of only 24 degrees on Saturday. High of 21 on Sunday. Monday, then we're going to finally see nice weather again for that holiday Monday. Sunshine and 26, and then back to 25 and 26 for Tuesday and Wednesday, respectively. So isn't that always the way that long weekends go, especially if you have camping plans? Of course, it's going to rain on your parade, as always. Average high for this time of year, 26. Average low, 11. 35 was the record high in Lethbridge on this day back in 2021. And in 1968, record low for Lethbridge was 3 degrees. 6 a.m. That is when the sun rose this morning, right on the dot there. And then 9:14 this evening is when the sun will be setting. So we're seeing about 2 minutes less daylight today than we saw yesterday. So 15 hours, 16 minutes of daylight. Okay, on the west coast tomorrow, clouds and then clearing for both Victoria and Vancouver. Both of those cities sitting at 23 degrees. Edmonton still under a heat warning until Saturday, right into the weekend there. 32 for the high tomorrow in Edmonton. High of 27 degrees in Calgary with mainly sunny skies. Now we are seeing some local smoke in both Saskatoon and Regina tomorrow over top of those clear skies. A high of 30 though in Saskatoon, 29 Regina, high of 26 in Winnipeg. Winnipeg seeing widespread smoke, and also those air quality warnings are in effect for Winnipeg. As we get into the central part of the country, no more heat wave for Toronto and Ottawa. Look at that, back to 24 degrees, clear skies in both of those cities. Actually, all three of those central cities, 24 and clear skies. As we move on to the Maritimes, Fredericton also seeing that heat wave lifting and high of 23 degrees. Halifax, no more heat wave there either. Instead, 5 millimeters of rain and only 16 for the high. High of 22 in Charlottetown tomorrow with clear skies, and also 22 in St. John's with clearing skies. So there you have it. That is your forecast. Hudson's Bay has received court permission to sell more of its leases. An Ontario court approved the collapsed retailer selling 6 leases, with 5 of them going to YM, the owner of mall brands like Blue Notes, Suzy Shear, and West 49. YM has not said which of its brands will move into each site. Also today, the judge prolonged the Bay's creditor protection to at least October 31st. Some Canadians who are paid bi-weekly are about to get some extra cash. If your first paycheck this year was Friday, January 3rd, then January and August are your 3 payday months. Financial planners say that it's important to have a plan for that extra paycheck before it hits your bank account. Certified financial planner Sarah McAuliffe says it could go under one of 4 categories: catch up, buffer for upcoming bills, breathing room, or your future. Now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 110 points on the day to finish at 27,259. The Dow was down 330 points to 44,130. The S&P 500 was down 23 to 6339, and the Nasdaq was down 7 points to finish at 21,129. West Texas Intermediate oil was down 74 cents to $69.26 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 5 cents to $3.10 US. Gold was up 15.47 to 32.90.13 US an ounce, and silver was down 42 cents to 36.71 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $7.62 per bushel, barley is at $6.10, canola is at $15.62, and corn is at $7.37 per bushel. Live cattle were down 5.30 to 227.77. Feeder cattle were down 7.58 to 331.38. Lean hogs were up 10 cents to 107.12. All of those were August contracts. And the Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 72.20 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, U.S. President Donald Trump dampened expectations of a trade deal with Canada materializing at the last minute as his Friday tariff deadline looms. In a post on social media early Thursday morning, the president said it would be very hard to make a deal with Canada after Prime Minister Mark Carney announced Wednesday Ottawa intends to recognize a Palestinian state. Trump previously sent a letter to Carney threatening to impose 35% tariffs if Canada does not make a trade deal by Friday. Up next, a new report has come up with some interesting findings on the physical, social, and economic impacts of the COVID lockdowns. Benjamin Clausen from the Justice Center joins us right after the break. Also, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. You can also visit our website or YouTube channel anytime to check out more of our stories and interviews. A new report from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms has come up with some interesting findings on the physical, social, and economic impacts of the COVID lockdowns. So joining us from Calgary to chat about this study, which is entitled 5 Years On, Tracing the Costs of Lockdowns. Well, here's Benjamin Clausen. He's the Research and Education Coordinator with the Justice Center. Welcome, Benjamin. Great to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me on.
Okay, so Benjamin, COVID restrictions, they started back in 2020, in theory, to protect the health of Canadians. But did the lockdowns help or hinder people's overall health? What did the report have to say on the mental and emotional health of Canadians about this?
Yeah, that's exactly what we were trying to find out in this report. And we looked at a whole series of data, cataloging data over year over year over the last 5 years. And we found that COVID in reality caused more harms than actually contributed to saving lives.
Yeah. Of course, elderly people are more vulnerable to things like the flu or COVID. So many did feel that the restrictions and lockdowns were justified, of course. But with the loneliness and the lack of emotional support available, do we know to what degree this actually affected the mental health and also physical health of seniors?
We didn't look at the mental health and physical health at seniors in detail that much. We looked more at Canadians overall and also younger people. But what we do know is that even for seniors, there were lots of deaths that were not caused by COVID, and this was way more pronounced for younger Canadians. So, for example, Canadians under the age of 45 had very low COVID death rates, but had quite high non-COVID death rates.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, when we're talking about loneliness, lack of emotional support and all of that, it can apply to any age, obviously. We saw what happened with the kids, with the school lockdowns and whatnot, right? The depression seemed to be on the rise.
Yeah, that's right. Mental health was something that was overlooked largely by politicians and policymakers. What we found in this report is that Canadians' overall mental health dropped dramatically, and that was for all ages. But most pronounced, again, was for young Canadians, especially the Canadians under the age of 45. Kids too were very affected. Not being able to go to school and socialize in person, not being being able to engage in physical activity as much, and also spending lots of time on screens. And so all that contributed significantly to a downward spiral in their mental health. And one report actually cited that there was around 67 to 70% of children that had a deterioration in at least one area of mental health. So, for example, depression, anxiety, and other obsessive.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. OCD, you were saying, like obsessive compulsive disorder. I could see that happening. Absolutely. It was just unbelievable what these kids went through. Is there any evidence that the lockdowns contributed to an increase in suicides?
Yeah, so that's a good question because suicide was, okay, I'm talking about medical assistance in suicide was legalized in 2016. And so since 2016, we see a continuing trend, upward trend in suicides, assisted suicides. But that trend increased even more in 2021. By 2023, we saw more than 15,000 Canadians choosing to die at the hands of doctors. And so that was about 5% of all Canadian deaths. And it was over 600 of those deaths that were with Canadians that did not have natural death reasonably foreseeable in the near future. And so that meant that it was Canadians with some sort of mental health issues. In terms of suicide overall, we didn't look at that very specifically, but those results were more mixed.
Oh my goodness. And of course, one of the problems during COVID was that thousands of medical checkups, diagnoses, treatments were delayed or canceled. And of course, that results in a serious ongoing backlog in Canada's healthcare system, doesn't it? So the question is, I guess, did efforts to stop the spread of COVID inadvertently cause more sickness and deaths that would have happened without the lockdowns?
Yes, that's absolutely true. During COVID, many thousands, I think it was over 15,000 MRI scans that were canceled, as well as a similar amount of cancer surgeries, non-urgent cancer surgeries that were canceled. And so that resulted in delays of diagnoses of cancers and various other illnesses. And it also resulted in cancer cases being more progressed already. And so there was a study that came out in the UK that listed all the number of excess deaths in various cancer categories. So, for example, lung cancers, prostate cancers, and so on. They all saw cancer cases above like 2,000 to 3,000 number of deaths in those cases in a year. So
that is scary. I mean, when you mention cancer surgery, I think any surgery for cancer should be an important one, should be right at the top of the list, not one that can be left for months and years. That's so scary. So Benjamin, what was the economic impact of the lockdowns? We talked about healthcare there, but economically, how many businesses went under? How many people ended up unemployed?
Yeah, that is interesting because we looked at how many businesses went under. Or insolvencies, as they call it. And ironically, during 2020, we saw a notable dip in the number of bankruptcies in businesses, but that was likely due to government subsidies for these businesses, including restaurants. There was less bankruptcies in 2020 than in the following years, or even in the preceding years. And again, that is likely because of government subsidies. But we are now seeing, as expected, those bankruptcies, the number of bankruptcies arise. And so, for example, in 2024, we had a higher number of bankruptcies and insolvencies than in the previous 5 years before COVID.
That's interesting. Do you think there's a relationship between the two? Do you think that maybe they were trying to get through those times and then they've kind of just gotten to that point where it's like, this is how it is, and we give up?
Yeah, so the dip in insolvencies could be largely due to government subsidies, but another thing would be businesses taking on loans during those years. And so now that those loans are maturing with higher interest rates, as we are seeing now, it all has a ripple effect. And this is something that governments, I don't think, looked at and considered enough. And you were also mentioning about other economic harms, and one of the economic harms that we saw, of course, in 2020 was a considerable spike in the number of unemployment rates. And so what we noticed was that those people that were affected by unemployment, they were almost entirely people that were being paid like minimum wage or so on. But the laptop class, those that get higher wages, they were almost entirely unaffected. In fact, we saw an increase in employment rates in that category.
All right. Can it be proven that the increase in food prices, housing, and other essentials was also due to the lockdowns?
Yeah, so it is hard, as we point out in the report, it is hard to actually prove a causality or a causal relationship between lockdowns and many of these harms. But we do point out that a lot of these harms were, of course, very likely due to lockdowns. And so during COVID, governments took on an extraordinary amount of debt. I believe it was over $650 billion in total debt that federal and provincial governments took on over these years. And so that, of course, had a negative impact on prices, more money chasing fewer goods. And so especially housing and food prices were especially affected with prices rising in 2022, 2023, and 2024 by 15, 17, 18%. And yeah.
Wow. This is an interesting one. The report also shows that there was an increase seen in crime rates.
Yeah, we saw an increase in homicides, a notable increase in homicides, but the most pronounced increase in crime rates was actually cybercrime. So, for example, cyber fraud increased by, I can't quite remember the number, but I think it doubled, more than doubled. We saw a huge spike in online child sexual exploitation, whether it was luring, whether it was posting child pornography and so on. And with online fraud, other types of online fraud, people are at risk of having of identity theft, and with that comes financial loss and all sorts of other difficulties.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Also, I believe domestic crime went up. People are kind of stuck under the house together for so long. It's interesting because there were other studies done that showed a decrease in crime rates due to the lockdown, specifically one by the Fraser Institute called Comparing Recent Crime Trends Between Canada and the U.S. They sort of looked at that and saw that crime rates went down, I think mostly because people are at home. But like you said, it just depends on the type of crime.
That is very true. I did look at that as well, domestic crime. And ironically, domestic crime victims increased a little bit for male victims, but not so much for female victims. And so the results were mixed in that regard, and we decided not to include that. But there are, however, in those kinds of statistics, many things that we don't see. So for example, the statistics showed that there was a decrease in overall alcohol consumption. But when you interviewed Canadians, they said that they consumed way more alcohol now, especially at home. And so what might explain that was Canadians were no longer able to go to pubs, for example, and have regular drinks with their friends there. So the overall decrease in Canadians' alcohol consumption was kind of explained away by that, but that didn't mean that they were not consuming more alcohol at home. And so, like when talking about statistics, there are a lot of different things that come into play, and so there were some mixed results there.
Okay, I can see that happening. One of the biggest grievances many Canadians had, obviously, was the loss of personal freedoms, including being able to speak freely, assemble freely, travel freely, worship freely, and not only that, but the enforcement of this through fines and imprisonment and the freezing of financial assets.
Yeah, that's right, and that's exactly why we wanted to produce a report that measured the lockdown harms on Canadians. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms should only be restricted, or any rights and freedoms can only be restricted if such restrictions are legitimately justified or demonstrably justified. And during COVID, governments oftentimes acted on assumptions and believed news reports and predictions that thousands, tens of thousands of Canadians were going to die based, of COVID, and so they went into lockdowns and did not consider, in our view, enough the lockdown harms that were going to result, not just in the short term, but in the long term. And so that's what this report is really trying to get at, is trying to reveal the true costs of these lockdown harms, to show that the lockdowns were really not demonstrably justified.
Your report is calling for governments to take responsibility for the damage done during this period and ensure that future public health policies uphold the Charter rights and freedoms of all Canadians. So what would this taking responsibility actually look like, practically speaking? Should some type of restitution be made? Should some laws be changed? Do you think we'll see any government accountability at some point?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess there's a lot of things that they could do, but I think to start would be, hey, we made some mistakes. The data showed that the lockdowns did actually not contribute to more benefits than the actual harms did. And so in the future, we need to be more careful about the kinds of policies that we put in place, especially when they affect Canadians' rights and freedoms.
Benjamin, thanks so much for being with us today. I appreciate having you on.
Well, thank you very much for having me on.
Benjamin Clausen is the Research and Education Coordinator with the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms.
If you're like me and you've got private insurance and benefits, you may be scrolling through what is covered and wondering what you could get treatment for, especially as the year gets closer to the end or at the start of the year when our benefits reset themselves. One of those things that you may be wondering if you need it or not is osteopathy. What is it? A lot of people don't know what it is. Well, I'm here with a practitioner who's going to answer some of those questions for us. I'm here with Mitchell Lawrence. He is an osteopathic manual therapist at Reset Osteopathy at the Medicine Tree in Lethbridge. Mitchell, welcome.
Hi there.
So first off, can you just tell us a little bit what osteopathy is?
So osteopathy is a holistic manual therapy and it aims to identify and treat various different conditions, injuries or just pains that you might have. We use a wide range of different techniques ranging from joint mobilization and articulation, massage techniques, releases for different muscles or complexes, as well as exercises, all of which are prescribed to the individual's needs.
So what specifically does it treat, and can you give me some examples?
So there's really no exhaustive list of what it can and can't treat. We see people with arthritis, headaches, just lower back pains and aches. We also treat nerve conditions such as sciatica or carpal tunnel, for a few of the more common ones you might have heard of. But then we can also treat things such as recovery from surgery or injuries, or such as joint replacements, things like that.
I've heard some people compare osteopathy to kind of like a merger between massage and physiotherapy and chiropractic. What would you say? Is that an accurate description?
Yes, a lot of people describe it in that way, probably due to the techniques that we use. We use different soft tissue and deep tissue massage techniques, but we also address the joints and the spine to try and release tension in there. But then we do give exercises as well, and these are suitable to everyone and they are prescribed differently. So that's the physio component that a lot of people would say, but really the combination of all of them is the way that we do our treatments.
So if someone has, say, lower back pain and they've got they feel a lot of tension in there, their muscles are tense, what's the benefit of osteopathy versus just going to see a massage therapist?
So we work holistically. So that means we won't just look at the lower back, we will maybe look at your mid back, into the areas below it, into your pelvis and hips, but even down into your legs. We also look at lifestyle, previous injuries, because all of these can either predispose or maintain the injury that you currently have. So really using all of these components helps to get to the cause of what's going on, and that will make treatment more thorough and more effective.
Okay, so I'm curious to learn more about this, and you know, I mentioned lower back because I'm a person who's a side sleeper, and when I'm sleeping on my side, sometimes I wake up in the morning and I've got pain in my sides and it radiates to my back. I do get some relief though with a pillow between my legs. Can you just explain what's going on?
So what the pillow will do is help to keep a more neutral spine and pelvis. When we are sleeping, lots of people will sleep in ways that could compromise their lower back or other areas such as their shoulders or neck. But the pillow is a really simple thing to do that can go between your legs. It shouldn't cause too much discomfort or affect the way you sleep, but it will make you wake up and not feel potentially as stiff. And then you could use that alongside exercises, for example, that we give, and that will help you get going in the morning.
It's funny that you mentioned pillows because it seems like one pillow is not enough, but two pillows is too many. Have you heard that complaint before?
Yes, and it takes our body time to adapt as well. So you might try one pillow, it might be not enough. Two might be too many, but after a couple of weeks, two might be perfect. It's all different based on the individual.
So it's great that you're explaining all of this, but I'm more of a visual guy, and I'm obviously some of our viewers here are as well. Do you mind demonstrating some techniques on me, and you know, just so the viewer can see you know what exactly happens during an osteopathy session?
Of course.
All right, so I mentioned I've got some lower back pain from the way I sleep. Some neck strain. What do you recommend you perform on me today?
So first we'd have to look at how the joints are moving. So to do that, I will get you to do some movements, and then I will do some movements for you. Then I can have a palpation in the area that's affected, and using your feedback, we can identify what is painful, and from that, we'll then get into treatment.
Okay, great. All right, let's do that.
First, would you just be able to stand facing the other direction, just so I can have a look at your back, please? Okay. So I'm just going to place my hands on your hips, if that's okay.
Okay.
And so I'm just checking the levels of different landmarks in your hips, your pelvis, and your lower back. Is there any pain when I'm pressing in there?
No. It actually feels kind of nice because it's like a mini shiatsu when you're pushing in like that.
Almost like a little bit of relief?
Yeah, like a micro massage.
Yes, I understand. And then I'm just going to get you to take a seat here, please, if that's okay.
Okay.
So if you could just cross your arms like that.
Okay.
Good. And I'm just going to reach my arm around the front here.
Okay.
I'm just going to be rotating your back.
So here I can see the physio side of osteopathy.
Yeah, what I'm doing right now is analysing how different parts of your back are moving. You mentioned how you've got that lower back discomfort, but sometimes we have to look elsewhere, and that could be contributing to what you've got going on.
Okay.
So would you be able to lay on your back now, please?
Sure.
If that's okay. And so we've just got, and then one leg at a time, I'm just going to lift your leg up straight. Do you feel any pain shooting down the back of your leg?
No, I just feel stretching.
Feel some tension? And if I lower your leg and pull your foot back, and then your toe. Is that okay? No shooting pain? Good. And we're just going to compare the other side.
Okay. Just stretching.
Same, just that stretching. Okay, good. And then the foot and the toe. Is that okay?
Yep.
Good. So if you could roll onto your side facing me, please.
Okay.
I'm just going to take your lower back through the same movements that I got you to do, standing up.
Okay.
So I'm just going to bend your legs. Good. And then I'm just going to move your legs towards and away from your body.
So what does you doing this versus me doing it accomplish?
So when you are doing it, you are actively doing the movement, which means you are activating the muscles as well. When I am doing it, you are passively doing that. So what it means is that your muscles aren't engaging,
Okay.
and I can have a better look at your true range of motion in the joint.
Okay.
Because sometimes if the muscle is the limiting factor, then I will be able to produce more movement than you would yourself.
Yeah, and earlier I said it feels like I'm doing a bit of physio. Now it feels like I'm getting a massage.
Yeah, this technique that I'm doing right now is a soft tissue technique, and it aims to just promote a bit of blood flow, break some tension in between the muscles. And what that will allow us to do is then move your joints and really release any tension that's in the joints as well.
Typically, do you have a certain type of client that you attract the most, like athletes or business professionals, or people with sedentary lifestyles, or people with very active lifestyles?
I get asked that question a lot, actually, and the truthful answer is I see all sorts of people. I see a mixture of young athletes, parents who have just got stresses from work, maybe injuries, or just from life, but also elderly people who have been having more chronic issues for longer. So yeah, there's no real trend to who we see. It's a really wide range of people.
That stretch you just did felt amazing.
Good, that should be helping to open up and release your lower back, but also into your pelvis.
How would osteopathy be complementary to someone who also visits a massage therapist and or a chiropractor?
So what we can do is we'll ask the patient maybe what their massage therapist or chiropractor is working on, so that we can then use that to guide our practice. But it will just help to further relax some muscles, release some tension in joints, maybe in between osteopathy appointments. So some people might come for an appointment once a month, but then in between that might go for a massage just to reinforce that relaxation.
Because I've heard that if you combine a chiropractic adjustment with a massage, the adjustment holds longer. Is that the same with osteopathy?
Because we do multiple techniques, a lot of people say that they feel after a session, it's almost as if they've had a chiropractic adjustment and a massage, because we work on the joints, not just the spine, but all the joints, as well as the muscles. So a lot of people would almost describe the effect of an osteopathic session to be that of a chiropractic and massage together. So I'm just going to do a little bit of work on your neck now. So I'm just going to see how it's moving first.
Sure.
So if I just turn your head that way and then the other way, do you see how it doesn't want to go that way?
Oh yeah.
As much?
Yeah. Is it because of side sleeping?
It could be many different factors.
Or like my pillow?
That could be a factor. Lifestyle, work, maybe previous injuries. There's lots that could be contributing to it.
I actually had a dull pain in the top of my head, and I didn't really notice it until it started going away just now. So have we become somewhat desensitized to pain?
Some people, if they've had chronic pain for a long time, the body's response to pain can change. And so some people might feel that something is less painful. Some people's bodies could get more sensitive to pain. So a stimuli that maybe wasn't sensitive in the past could now cause pain. And that's very different for every person.
What kind of training do you need to go through in order to get into this type of work?
So I trained in the UK, in Wales, and my program was a 4-year integrated master's course at Swansea University, and that's 4 years all in one go. And as part of that course, we have to do 1,200 hours of clinical practice.
Wow.
And so that is the way that you can then graduate, and after that you go straight into work.
So we know that chiropractors they have to follow regulations, same with massage therapists. What about osteopaths, or in your case, an osteopathic manual therapist?
So here in Alberta, our regulatory body is the Alberta Association of Osteopathic Manual Therapists. So we have regulations with them regarding insurance, treatments, right to practice. That's different province by province, and so it depends whereabouts in not just Canada but whereabouts in the world you are. But a lot of the regulatory bodies will be very similar in terms of right to practice, what you are and aren't allowed to do as an osteopathic manual therapist.
So obviously we've been through some techniques here, and I must say, like, I do feel a lot more, like my joints are more fluid. I can move a lot easier. Typically after an appointment, what would you recommend that a patient does to keep things kind of like well oiled?
So we try and work with what a patient would usually do in their daily life. So we try not to say that they have to limit or restrict their activities, but usually after an appointment, taking it a little bit easy is a good idea, just so that we don't strain the body. It just gives that body time to respond to the treatment, but from the next day, they can get back into their normal routine, back into training, working, whatever that might be.
Mitchell Lawrence is an osteopathic manual therapist. Mitchell, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Naveen Day. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.